Okay. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I hope that we can have a really wonderful celebration together and just a really wonderful day. I'm grateful for you all for being here. So I am continuing our series, as Pastor Donnie mentioned, on a season for growth. And, one of the reasons we wanted to do a series on growth is because, for one thing, it's spring. So it's a time for new growth and in nature. But we also recognize that in our own lives, in our spiritual journeys, our path in life, something that we're all looking for and experiencing is growth. And that if life goes on and we don't experience growth, then life eventually starts to become kind of mundane or kind of pointless. So experiencing growth is, as we know, not something that just happens automatically to us. Not the kind of growth that we're looking for in looking for fulfillment in our lives. So how do we discover growth in our life? How do we create growth in our life? That's kind of the purpose of this series and what we're talking about. So I hope that something through these messages really, touches you or is meaningful for you during this time. So I want to start off, so my message today is called Growth Takes Time. So you'll see a theme as we progress through the different messages, generally has to do with gardening. Last week, Pastor Donnie talked about the planter, and we'll be talking about planting seeds and the environment to create healthy growth. And then today we're talking about how growth takes time. So I want to start off by reading a passage from our founder, Reverend Moon. He said, "In spring, the trees blossom and butterflies and bees dance in and around them. They do this in accordance with the principle of love. When new buds open on the trees and branches start to grow, they quicken in order to whisper in love. The trees grow, and when the time comes, they bear fruit. Relationships expressing the principle of love are evident in the plant world. All this is educational material for us. When you look at nature, you see that what I have said is well-founded. Even God moves based on the relationship of love between subject partner and object partner. Accordingly, whatever plant you consider, it acts based on the principle of true love. The mineral world is the same. Therefore, we have veins of gold and silver in the earth and veins of blood in the human body. The mineral world serves a purpose higher than its own." So one of the things that I've come to recognize over time, and especially these past 6 years of giving messages and watching my kids grow and all these different things, is how much educational material that God created for us in nature. How many lessons that we can learn through the creation that God gave for us to have experiences. And then also just watching my children grow and learn things on their own, it's kind of very humbling, and I find that there's like just a never-ending supply of lessons to be learned and experiences to be gained. So it's really, really cool. Last week, Pastor Donnie was saying how they were planting some seedlings, and one of our daughters was planting some seedlings, and then she would watch the seed and was like, "When's it going to grow?" I want the plant. And it's kind of interesting how, obviously that's kind of silly, right? Like, only a child would think that once you plant the seed that you're going to have a plant right away. But it's kind of funny how even as adults, we kind of find ourselves having that same thinking, maybe not so much about plants, but maybe about other things in our life. For example, we want to see instant results. We want to win the lottery. We want to have a miraculous transformation of our health, lose a whole bunch of weight all in a very short period of time. Or we want God to just show us the way. If God could just speak, if God could just give me a moment of transformation, then that would be what I need in my life. Or maybe we have some challenging situation in our life, or some relationship challenge, and we look for like a quick fix, or that one thing that I could say to that person, or that one place I could send that person where they would learn their lesson or something like that. That would fix things. We often find ourselves looking for quick fixes in different areas of our life. Maybe we've all heard this kind of saying, how when people win the lottery, most of that money ends up many of those people end up bankrupt or losing all that money, because you end up with all this money, but you have the habits or lifestyle or way of dealing with money that you had before, and then before you realize it, all the money is gone. Or you end up in a worse situation than you were before. I think I read that 30% of people who win the lottery end up bankrupt within 5 or 10 years. So that means 70% don't end up bankrupt. So, there's like a silver lining there. But I think that there's a valuable lesson there, that anything worth waiting for, anything worth really desiring in life takes effort. It takes time. It takes an investment. But sometimes we are impatient and we want results in our life right now. Or sometimes we feel like, I worked really hard, or I did a lot of this or did a lot of that, so I should be seeing certain results in my life that I'm not seeing. So we feel sometimes a little bit entitled that I should be seeing different results in my life than I am actually seeing. Which is fair, but at the same time, we also have to consider the possibility that the fruits that we are seeing in our life are born from seeds that were planted maybe a long time ago. We have to consider that possibility. And that if we want to see different fruits in our life, then we have to plant new seeds. And we have to nurture those seeds over time. I think it's fair to say that whatever we see in our life, or whatever results we see in our life, whatever fruits we see in our life, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It came through a process of time. And therefore, new seeds also take time to develop and bear fruit as well. As a pastor and in my own life, I often see this reality manifest itself in the area of like church workshops and gap programs and things like that, where many times people will go and have these kind of transformational or inspirational experiences, and then we'll often come back and it's very hard to maintain that lifestyle. It's very hard to maintain that state of being. It's very hard to maintain maybe these new habits or new inspirations that we got during that time. Even if you had maybe a very deep experience, a deep prayer, an experience with God. And the way I see that is that, we have our life and we have our experience in our life. We have our family and the environment that we grow up in. And then sometimes, by the grace of God, we have the opportunity to be put in a new environment, a new situation. Let's say we call it a new soil, right? We have the soil that we grow up in, and it has certain experiences in our family and our whatever. But then sometimes we have the opportunity to go to a workshop or have the opportunity to have some kind of a life-changing or life-inspiring experience. But in that experience, you had a structured environment, a schedule, mentorship, people who, maybe really invested into you 100%. Really good content, positive peer pressure. So in a even many times a very short period of time, you can have kind of like a blossoming experience, because you get put into this rich soil that gives you all the things that you need to blossom in that moment. But then many times what will happen is we go from being in the rich soil to being in whatever soil we came from, and then we struggle because we don't have that same support structure. We don't have that same support system. And so we start to wilt. We start to dry up. I had that experience. And I had to find a new environment where I could continue to flourish. But if you've had this experience before, then you know that the way I'm talking about it is very objective. It's like, oh yeah, that happens to people. But the reality is that's actually a very painful experience for the person experiencing it, because you experience what it's like in a way to kind of be in a more nourishing environment. And in some ways, I think that we would all love to be in that kind of experience all the time, but life's not like that. I think in some ways we're blessed if we can have the experience sometimes. I think some people have never even had that experience before. But it can feel painful to have this kind of an idea of the way that I would like to live my life and a way I would like to be, but then not really be able to maintain it myself. And and many times people will feel like, what was the point? Why did I even have that experience if I can't continue to manifest it in my life or to live that way? And so I think that there's a couple different lessons or takeaways to be learned from this. I think for one thing, it's really valuable to have those kinds of experiences. It's really valuable to be able to, even if it's just for a short time, a week, a month, a year, to be able to have that experience kind of heaven, to feel like you're loved and invested into, and all the things that you need to be able to blossom as a human being are provided for you. That's amazing. But how many times have I also heard people say or heard people wonder, why doesn't it stick? Why do people return to their old lifestyle or old habits or old ways of being afterwards? And kind of wondering why doesn't it last, or something like that. So this kind of reminds me a little bit of the parable of the sower in the Bible. And I think that many of you know this parable, but it's from, I think it's from Matthew, Mark. I know it's in several of the books. But basically, Jesus is talking and sharing lots of parables, and it goes, then he told many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Matthew 13. So even though I think Jesus had a different point when he was talking about this parable, he was talking about God kind of spreading his word, and different people and different groups are kind of more ready to hear it than others. But I think that it also highlights the point that of our experience in our life, that even if we have a really great experience, but if our heart is not ready, our environment isn't conducive for it, then it can be choked out quickly. And so even though we want and encourage having these kind of transformational experiences in one point in our life, we also need to consider the whole life. the whole life experience as well, not just like the one-time experience or the one moment in our time, in our life. I think real transformation and real growth is something that happens over a period of time. It takes consistent effort. It takes making new habits. It takes effort even when the original inspiration wears off. And I think this is probably something we've all experienced. Inspiration, no matter how deep and no matter how great it is, will eventually wear off at some point. All feelings and emotions and inspirations always change. That's something we can always count on. So what is left after those experiences wear off? Having, I don't know if have you heard this road to Damascus type experience? Have you heard that term before? It's from the story of Paul when he is on the road to Damascus. He's the one who's persecuting all the Jews who are following Jesus, and he has this experience where God speaks to him, and he kind of changes his life from there. And I think that, we look for these kind of experiences, and these kind of experiences are really great. I mean, if you've had this kind of an experience before. But I think that it's important as people of faith and as people trying to live a life that, really reflects God in our lives, to our families, to our communities, to each other, to ourselves, that we also, we don't get too caught up in looking for that kind of experience. I think that we often, especially in traditional Christianity, where the belief is that God created the world in 6 days and God resurrected Jesus. So if God could do those things, then God can do anything, right? God can fix my problem. God can fix that person. God can heal my body, all these things. And, I do believe that miracles can happen. But God also created the laws of the universe. God also created the laws of nature. And God doesn't break those laws just for our convenience. When we look at nature, and remember I talked about how earlier, nature is kind of like God's guidebook for us. Nothing happens, nature is a miracle, but nothing happens miraculously in nature. Everything happens through a period of time and a process of growth. So I have this quote here from True Father. He said, "When we consider the principles God used in the creation of heaven and earth, we see that he did not first make the central beings and then the environment for them. Rather, before creating human beings, God prepared an environment based on relationships. In order to create human beings, he first made soil, for example. He established the internal based on the external. This is the principle by which heaven and earth were created. Things that existed at an earlier stage have become the basis for greater things at a later stage. And things with lesser value have become the foundation for things of greater value. This is the principle underlying the creation of heaven and earth." When we look at the Bible, when we look at the divine principle, when we look at the history of God's working in history, when we look at parallels, we see that nothing really happened just because God wanted it to happen. Everything happened over a period of time. Everything happened on a foundation of preparation. Everything happened on after a period of investment and time and energy to be able to make that thing happen. And then it happened. But then we often look at the thing that happened and be like, oh, I want that in my life. We look at someone else's transformation and we don't see all the hard work, all the prayers, all the pain, all the heartache that might have come before that. We just want the results. But life doesn't work that way. And just like when people win the lottery and they have the results, but they don't have the foundation to merit the results, then eventually the results fade away. So I believe that our focus really should be to build the foundation to be able to merit the results. Because otherwise, no matter what blessings God gives us, we won't deserve them. We'll squander them, we'll lose them. I'm talking about, myself, our family, our church, but also, I don't know, maybe you can consider what that might look like in your life. I don't know. They say also the same thing with inheritances, right? Many people will inherit money from their family, but also a large percentage of those people will lose that money within their generation because they didn't earn it. They don't have the habit of growing the money or investing the money or developing the money that created the money in the first place in most cases. So creating the environment for sustained growth and development is really, really important. Really, really important. It's the nourishment, it's the soil that allows for healthy growth to happen. Without the soil, no matter how nice of the seed, no matter how good of the plant, no matter how well you care for the plant, if the soil isn't good, it won't grow. We've actually been working on a project that we really hope will build some fruit, and it's something that we could only do now after 6 years of investment in the community. It's interesting how over time, when you invest into things and you develop things little by little, then new opportunities open up based off of the foundation of what was already been created. That wouldn't have been possible if we had just did it 6 years ago. And let me get off of that. There we go. So at the beginning of the year, we told you that we wanted to start a CARP chapter. And for those of you who don't know, CARP is like college-age ministry for unificationists. And we have many young people across the nation who are doing, Generation Peace Academy. It's a gap year missions-style program. And one of the often painful experiences that many of these young people have is that when they go home, they struggle because during the program, they had these really deep experiences, and they were mentored, and they were cared for, and they were invested into, and through the program and the people who invest into the program, a lot of these young people really blossom. They really have such a great experience, and they had faith-deepening experiences. But then when they go home and they go back to their community, they often really, really struggle because that system of mentoring and care doesn't generally exist at home. And it's not always the case, but many times is the case. So we've been talking with some of these young people, and we've been telling them that we would like to start something for you guys here. It's mutually beneficial, but we showed them how we would do a mentoring, we would do talks, we would do workshops, we would do, we would work together to build their experience. And I don't know what's going to come of it, maybe nothing, but I'm really hopeful that something can come of it, because I really believe that now, after 6 years of creating the foundation of having built up the community to what it is today, that we actually have enough foundation that we could create something like that. And it would be sustainable, not because it's another program, but because the care and the concern and the people are here. And one of the things that we told them is that, we want to create the environment where you guys can flourish in your college years. Because a lot of people, when you go to college, you work, you take classes, and as many of you know, college is an incredibly secular environment. You're not going to learn about God at college. Nobody at college is going to encourage you to pray regularly or do conditions or go to church or, tithe or, any of these things. So creating an environment where they can flourish even during that period of their life and prepare them for their families and all these kind of things is, anyway, something that we're really excited about and really hoping for. And if it works, then we also will have a batch of really wonderful college-age students who will be good role models for our youth here in this community as well. So So, in this kind of thought, we've thought a lot about, what does it take to really grow a healthy community? Because it can't be done through just programs. It can't be done through just, mottos and vision statements. That's one of the things that I learned very early on in terms of when we were studying, like Rick Warren and other pastors, is that you can't just throw a bunch of initiatives and programs and bullet points at a church and expect it to change anything. You have to change the heart and soul, the substance, the soil, the nourishment. And at the end of the day, we can't change anybody. We can't fix anybody's problems, whether it's challenges in people's lives, finances, career, family, relationships. But what we can do is we can provide good soil. We can fertilize the soil. We can provide the environment for growth, and then give people the tools and the environment to hopefully flourish. But at the end of the day, that's our own decision. But it takes time. That's my main point. It takes time for anything to grow, for any seed that God has planted in your heart, for any inspiration that God has given you, for any experience that you've had that maybe you felt was meaningful for you or changed your life in some way. You need to nourish it. It needs time to grow, to develop, especially at the beginning. Especially at the infancy. That's when it could be crushed. It needs time to develop. It needs the right environment to develop. And so I want to encourage you that if you feel that the fruits you're experiencing in your life are not what you've been looking for, or you have an inspiration and you're not sure how to get it from just an inspiration to being a part of your life, then I really encourage you to look at nature. Nature gives us all the information and the lessons that we need. And it's never too late to start planting new seeds. That's something I want to say too. It doesn't matter where you're at in your life or how old you are. It's never too late to start planting new seeds, because it's the new seeds that are going to bear new fruit in your life. And when we nurture the seeds of inspiration in our life, eventually those are bound to bear fruit at some point. Please join me in prayer. Good morning. Heavenly Parent, we thank you so much for this day, a beautiful spring day after all the up and down weather. We know, Heavenly Parent, that you are always and have always been the planter. You're always putting seeds in our hearts, in our families, in our society. Everywhere that can receive a seed, you are putting it out there. And so many of those inspirations, transformations, they get choked by the weeds. But some of them take hold, Heavenly Parent. Some of them blossom and flourish and multiply. And we know that how painful it must be for you to see so many of your seeds be trampled on and not able to blossom. But Heavenly Parent, I really pray that with your guidance and with creation as a guide and with your love and hope and expectations for us, Heavenly Parent, that we can provide the nourishment for one another, that we can provide the support for one another, that the seeds that you're planting in our hearts and in this community, in this world, can take root. They can grow deep roots and blossom and multiply, Heavenly Parent. I pray that we can learn how to be gardeners like you, to provide the rich nourishment so that our children, our ideas, our inspirations can bear fruit, Heavenly Parent, for you, to return joy to you, to return hope and inspiration to you. When we see this world and there are so many problems, Heavenly Parent, we want the fruit, the seeds that you are planting, Heavenly Parent, to really bear fruit. Please guide us. Please allow us to create the rich soil that can bring your fruit, your seeds to bear in this world. I offer this prayer in my name, Michael Adonia Hendrick, a Blessed Central Family. Amen and Aju. Thank you.